All right, welcome to session number 20. Wow, can't believe we're at 20. Data storytelling. And we're going to be talking about data visualizations, which includes charts and measures and graphs or whatever you want to call them. This session kind of wraps up, it brings us full circle, you'll see here in a moment, from where we started many weeks ago. So for those of you that have been through all of them, congratulations. you stayed with it all the way through. For those of you that are new, welcome. Everything that we've done has been recorded on video. Those videos are accessible through YouTube. So if you're interested, you can go back and watch any and all the videos. There's also a PDF for each of these presentations. First of all, I want to start off by thanking my partner in this process, the IIBA of Tampa Bay. If you are a member, great. If you're not a member, we'd love to have you become a member. Cliff will probably put up in the text chat the many different ways that you can connect with us. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Meetup. So feel free to join the group. The great thing is that the price of joining our Meetup is nothing. So that's the good news. There is a cost for the IIBA if you decide to become a member of the IIBA, and we hope that you do, because it's a great organization. There we go. So Cliff's our VP of membership, and there's the links both to him and to the groups. The IIBA is the International Institute of Business Analysts, and it's iiba.org, I'm pretty sure. So if you're a business analyst, that's, or you don't have to be a business analyst to be a member of the IIBA. There's a lot of people that are members. But if you're interested in business analysis, this is a great group. This is what we do. So my name is Richard Frederick. I'm an instructor. I teach two different types of classes that are traditional classes, a requirements class and a project management class. However, I've dedicated these two classes to business data analytics, which is the language of data. Again, if you're new, you'll see all these icons on the screen. These logos represent all the different organizations that are trying to figure out how to do requirements. We always joke about if you're a business analyst, requirements is probably the hardest part of the job, and it's because of the fact that human beings speak in a very ambiguous way, and we have to take those vague ambiguities and turn them into very specific testable statements. So the whole journey that we've been on the last 20 weeks is about, why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And so that's what this has been all about. And again, this is number 20, and kind of is the full circle. This kind of ends this series. So for at least for a little bit. And then we're going to be introducing coming up some new speakers and new topics. So I'll tell you about that at the end. Again, I mentioned that I teach requirements. It's a traditional requirements class. I don't know if you've ever taken a requirements class, but they're pretty standard. There's a foundation section, and then you get into what we call the 4 fingers of requirements, which is elicit, analyze, document, and validate. Traditionally, requirements have been geared towards product and process. So when you're trying to write and describe to the developers how you want something built, traditionally it's been about what the product is or what the process is. Recently, within the last few years, the term digital transformation has come up, and digital transformation really means data. So if you're hearing that buzzword digital transformation, what they're really talking about is data. So what I did was I expanded the section on data. Not that what I teach is still relevant, whether it's a product or process, but I expanded the section on data because data is the future. Data is the new oil, and the future is about data. In addition to a requirements class, I also put together a project management course that is specific to data. And it's hybrid, so it doesn't matter whether your organization is agile or waterfall or both. Everything that's in both of these classes fits in either of those methodologies. This particular one, you can see it's color coded. Those colors are associated with roles that we'll talk about here in a moment. But it's a traditional project management course. Depending on your environment, we use different words like envision and initiate, or plan and increment zero, or develop and execute and develop and model, or stabilize and control, deploy and close. If you're a traditional PMI oriented project manager, or if you're an agile project manager, this class is designed to fit both of those, and again is geared very much towards data. What I do is people take these two agendas and they print them out and they go into meetings, and it helps them drive meetings actually, because it gives you all the information that you would need to clearly put together all of the detail that you're going to need to do some sort of business to analytics type of project. About me, quick background. I owned a software company in the 1990s that integrated software into autonomous robots. We called them Autobots. I thought for sure, and I've said this many times, that by now we'd be automated, but we're pretty close now. It's a lot closer than it's ever been. So, but understand that it's all about data, and that's the key. Everybody thinks it's about software. It's really about the data. I mean, the software is important, but it's really about the data. Each of these sessions is really about two things. One is seek to understand. So I always believe that's kind of the role of a business analyst, is to seek to understand. The last summary will be train the trainer. So the idea is to take what you've learned in the class and spread it to as many people as you wish. It's open source. So we ask that, hey, send it out to whoever you think might use it. So what we're going to be talking about today are 6 topics: dashboards and robots, describing data visualizations, Abela's chart type hierarchy, writing about trends, compare and contrast, and data storytelling tips. So let me go back to where we started in session number 1 and talk about dashboards and robots. I don't think a lot of people yet it's dawned on them that the world of corporate work has changed, but boy, after this year, it's really going to accelerate this last year, as people were virtual in the way that they operated. The business analyst role is going to matriculate up. So not only are we going to still be required to do requirements, elicit, analyze, document, and validate requirements, but we're also going to need to be able to communicate at the highest levels of the institution with the executives who operate the business through dashboards. And what dashboards really are is they're front ends to robots. And what robots are is that they're data. So when you hear the word robot, it's data. Now people think of mechanical robots, and yeah, there's always going to be mechanical robots, but the predominant concept of a robot in the world that we're going to be dealing with aren't necessarily mechanical robots, but software robots. And the way we're going to interface with those software robots is through dashboards. But I'll give you a visual. So here's kind of a visual of a person on the left who has a tablet and has, obviously those data visualizations are graphs and charts, what most people call graphs and charts. That's superimposed on top. I don't envision that standing out. It's just they're letting you know that's what they're looking at. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there is a person in blue. Oh, I jumped ahead. Let me go back one moment. The people on the right-hand side of this screen represent those roles from the project management agenda. And let me touch on them really quickly, because this is the team of the future. At the top, you have your business analyst, product owner. Underneath, you have your project manager, scrum master. And again, it's not always hard edge to the roles, but this is, I'm just kind of putting those roles together. Underneath that, you have an IT sort of system architect in green, and then underneath that, there's another green box, and that's your developer, data scientist, subject matter expert, Underneath that, you have your QA test, and at the bottom, you have intelligence, intelligent assistance. And this whole journey that we've been on is about how to write requirements for intelligent assistance, which is really about how to write requirements for data. So when you talk about writing requirements for data or describing data, you're really talking about how to set up the machines for intelligent assistance that can run autonomously. That's what a robot is. It runs independent of a person. So our job as analysts is to write those technical requirements, or at least start that process, write requirements that can be tested, but to also be able to communicate at the highest level with executives. And that's really what the data storytelling is about. So keep in mind that in the future, executives will be going to intelligent assistant just like they have another staff member on their staff, on their team. And we're ahead of that right now. We're sort of ahead of that curve on a day-to-day basis, but that's coming. And I know that a lot of people have Alexa, which I think is a great example, or Google Now, or Siri in a phone, or at home. That's intelligent assistance. Our job as analysts is to write requirements for the creation of those intelligent assistants, and at every level. Okay, so we'll kind of go through that again. So down here, that was the machine learning that we sort of talked about at the very last session that we had. Was I just kind of talked about machine learning, where we train the machines through data. The data is known as telemetry. So I always tell every analyst in every class that I start, or every project manager in every class that I start, that the two most important words in my classes are the word operate and the word telemetry. And it's important to understand that when the institution operates, it's generating telemetry. Just like when a computer operates, it generates telemetry. When an automobile operates, it generates telemetry. So anything that operates generates data, telemetry. And the data is used to train the machines. How do we do that? Well, we get the data, we clean the data, we train the model, we test the data, and then we improve the process. Total quality management, TQM, or Kaizen, or Lean, or scalable, agile, however you want to look at it, whatever your methodology is, or just machine learning. So you can see that in the machine on the right, there's intelligent assistance, and that blue person, that's Cortana from Microsoft, and that was the only visual I ever had of an intelligent assistant. Everybody else just uses a device and a voice. So I like to use that photograph. Just makes you think, oh wow, there's going to be an assistant embedded in the machines. Absolutely. Okay. This pyramid really shows kind of the relationship of where we've been over the last 20 sessions. So we started at the top, again, talking about the vision, and the vision is that an executive or anybody communicates to the machine with a dashboard and can ask, hey, where have we been? And the machine will give them historical data. And then using that historical data, you can then predict the future. Where are we going? And we taught that whole process through a session on earned value. So the whole concept behind dashboards and robots, or business intelligence, is that you use historical data to predict future events. So the more data you have, the more accurate your prediction is. And we've covered all the different areas. We've talked about big data, we've talked about portfolios, we've literally covered everything at a high level. But the pyramid shows, the vision. And so we started off at the vision, and we worked our way through all of these sections, whether you realize or not, over the last 20 sessions. And now we're kind of coming back to the top again, where we've shown you how to communicate data, structured query language, structured English. We've talked about requirements and testing. We've kind of worked it all the way down. We talked about agile methodologies versus waterfall methodologies, assembly methods, I called them. We've talked about portfolio management, and now we're back up at the top, and let's say we're at the dashboard level. We're going to talk about how to communicate data in kind of a high level English oriented way. Okay, so that's what this whole section is about. Now, the term that's used in the business intelligence world, one of the terms I should say, to describe what most of us call charts and graphs is called data visualizations. Now, I don't know if you use that term or not, and I'm not saying that that's, yeah, that's carved in stone, but generically speaking, these things that we, charts and graphs, they're usually called data visualizations, and that you set them up on a dashboard. So you can see Cortana on the right, and you can see a small image of a dashboard down below, and it includes all kinds of things: simple text, tables, heat maps, scatter plots, lines, slope graphs, vertical bars, stacked bars, waterfall, horizontal bars, stacked horizontal bars, square areas. Those are just a few of the many, many examples of visualizations that are available to you to describe what's going on, to tell your story. All right, now, what we're going to do here is sort of walk you through the process of actually communicating at a high level. So when you begin the process of describing data visualizations, the first thing you want to do is introduce the visualization. I'd like you to look at this graph. Let me show you this pie chart. Let's have a look at the model. Let's turn to the map. To illustrate my point, let's look at some diagrams. I can see from these figures. These are all examples of ways that you can initiate the conversation about your findings. So obviously you're going to go off, you're going to do analysis, you're going to come back with results, and then you're going to need to communicate those results. So there's really kind of three parts to it. There's introducing the visualization. There's describing the parts of the visualization. So for example, every one of these visualizations got different parts, and you're going to describe them. The vertical axis represents total annual sales. The horizontal axis shows our market share. The curve, the solid line, the dotted line, the broken line, the shaded area, et cetera, et cetera. Once you've described those visualizations, then what you want to do is describe the results. And these are the measurements that are your key performance indicators that you're measuring on the dashboard. For example, sales rose, profits fell, demand increased, turnover decreased, turnover dropped, turnover decreased, demand, profits. I mean, as you go through and read through it, it's basically what they're using here are sales, profits, demand, and turnover. And they're just describing them those terms in different ways. But there are there's just so many different measurements. Every key performance indicator, every KPI, every management objective, those are all measurements or results that have to be described. And as an analyst, you're going to need to be comfortable with the idea of writing, these kinds of terms and understanding, not only the measurement, but how to describe it for senior management. So here's some examples of words that you can use. And again, I know this is a video, but I have a PDF file. So if you want the PDF file, I'll show you how to get it at the end, just by sending me an email. And you can go back and use this as a reference tool. But there's verbs, and these are verbs that describe data: rise, increase, grow, go up to, climb, boom, peak, fall, decline. I won't read them all, but there's adjectives: sharp, rapid, huge, dramatic. And there's adverbs like dramatically, rapidly, hugely, massive, sharply, steeply. Now, it also at the bottom says there's a list of adverbs to describe the speed of the change, right? Rapidly, quickly, swiftly, suddenly, steadily, gradually, slowly. So how does this relate to requirements? Well, you have to be comfortable at every area. So you might have business requirements and then technical requirements. So these would be more of your narrative words that you would use when describing a high level of information that might go to a senior level executive, as opposed to very detailed structural requirements that look like test cases that would go to developers. So business analyst is a jack of all trades, master of none. We covered that earlier. Anyway, this is all part of it. So we're going to go a little deeper here. Okay, so there's a great tool. I think it's a great tool. It's Dr. Andrew Abela's chart type hierarchy. And this was put together to help you decide what type of visualization to use based on answering the question, what would you like to show? And it's organized around 4 categories of things that you might show: comparison, distribution, composition, and relationship. And then if you read into it, it then breaks it down into more detail, and it kind of leads you to, oh, okay, this would be a good chart for that. Now, this chart's kind of hard to read. It's black and white. It's kind of faint. But there's another version of it that I thought was really useful, or more useful, or equally useful, not necessarily more useful, because both of them work in conjunction with each other. And for example, what would you like to show? So comparison is very popular. Like if you go back up, you'll see that probably comparison is the largest number of charts, with composition being next, and then distribution, and then finally relationship. But here they grouped them a little bit differently, and which I liked. I thought this was a good, so between these two diagrams is a really good way of kind of looking at and understanding how you want to present your information to senior management. And so we're going to work through two examples: comparison over time, and we're going to look at composition, simple share of total. Okay. Now, what's interesting is most people don't call it comparison over time, but they call that as a trend. So describing trends. So on that chart, instead of saying trend, it says comparison over time. So you have to know that that's what that means. So a trend is the overall idea of the graph. And you can see a graph to the right. It says the graph shows information about technology usage in the UK over time. So a trend is the overall idea of the graph, and what's happening, or what has happened, the main change over time, the most notable thing about the graph, the pattern over time, the pattern for different places or groups of people. It says most graphs will have two trends, and there'll be two graphs with a trend in each. You can tell about the two trends in two separate paragraphs. Make sure you've identified the trends in the graph, and there's 4 parts to what you're going to write. There's an introduction, the first trend, the second trend, and a conclusion. So now let me give you an example, because it's really useful to have an example. So if you look at the text on the left, you have the introduction, the graph shows. You have trend number 1. I'm not going to read it all, because you can come back and read that later at your own time. It says overall, the first trend: there was a widespread adoption of new technology during these years. Nearly 9 out of 10 people in the UK were online by 2015, and then it goes on to explain some more information. And the second trend, if we look at the trends over time, we can see that the uptake of new technology increased dramatically in this period. Okay, this is data storytelling right here. So when people talk about data storytelling, this is it right here on this screen. So if you're wondering what it looks like, this is what it looks like. It's describing the data that you see on the graph. Okay. Second type of example is comparing and contrasting, which on Abela's chart type hierarchy would be called composition, showing simple share of total. So here, instead of 4 parts, there's 3 parts. Part 1, describe what sort of chart it is and what it's about. Part 2, describe the sections of the chart starting with the biggest and working your way down. And part 3, a short conclusion giving an overall view of what the chart is about. And it's really interesting, because I don't think a lot of people know that when you describe a chart, you want to start with the biggest thing and then work to the smallest thing, depending on what it is that the point that you're trying to make. Or you could start at the smallest thing and go to the biggest thing, but you want to kind of go in an order from large to small, or small to large. So keep that in mind. So here's another example of that. Okay, so we had the 3 parts. The first part is explaining what the graph's about. This graph shows the results of a survey in which people aged 16 and over were asked about their preferred devices for accessing the internet. And then part 1 of the first part of it is, from the pie chart, it's clear that the majority of participants prefer to use smartphones and laptops. And then it gives you some numbers, and then it says nearly 1/3 of participants prefer to go online with a smartphone. And then it goes down and starts looking at, the different percentages. So the smartphone, and then the laptop, then the tablet, then on a desktop computer, and then finally other. And then at the last, there's a conclusion. In conclusion, since mobile and portable devices are the most popular choices, it's clear that many participants are accessing the internet outside their homes. Okay, so again, this is another example of data storytelling. So when people talk about, well, what's data storytelling? This is it right here. Okay. So some data storytelling tips. First of all, take them on your journey. Remember that whenever you're describing things, it's a journey. Tell a compelling story. People remember stories, not data. Questions can be used to set up your story. For example, what are you trying to show? That might be called your hypothesis, or what is your audience going to learn? Now, you don't have to do it that way, but again, just keep that in mind. Explain with visuals, narrate with your words. So that was what we tried to show here. There's both visuals and words. We call it narrative, pictures with narrative. Okay. People understand metrics, trends, and patterns better with visuals. Use words to add your voice to the data. Be honest and credible, don't sugarcoat the negatives, and don't mislead with fraction data. It's not about expressing an opinion, it's just describing the facts. Now, you can make the facts more interesting by adding adjectives and adverbs, as opposed to just simply verbs. Be clear and concise, remove everything that's not part of your story. Know and cater to your audience. What are their interests and goals? Do they want the details or just the high-level summary? Again, that's pretty standard stuff when you're communicating to executives. Provide context, compare metrics over time or to industry benchmarks. Numbers are meaningless without context. And then finally, end or conclude with some kind of an insight. If you can't learn something useful from the data, the story isn't worth telling. Okay, so in conclusion, here's what we've learned. That's kind of the thing. All right. So that brings us to the summary of what we just went through. So I tell everybody that the goal obviously is seek to understand, but then to train the trainer. And the best way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. So we hope that you'll take this information and you will go off and show other people or provide them with information that will help them do their job more effectively. We covered dashboards and robots, which is really the reason why we're doing all of these sessions. Actually was about originally dashboards and robots. We just talked about describing data visualizations. We talked about using Abela's chart type hierarchy to help you figure out what kind of chart you want to use, what kind of story you want to tell. We talked about writing about trends as an example, compare and contrast as an example. I picked those two because they're probably the most commonly used. Trend analysis and compare and contrast are probably the two most common things that you're going to see about data. And then finally, some data storytelling tips. All right, so last thing, if you are not connected to me and you would like the PDF file of this session, please send me an email, rfrederick.pmp@gmail.com, and just, say data storytelling PDF, and I will send it right back to you. Also, yeah, we could do a whole section on Dr. Abela's chart. I mean, that's a whole, that in and of itself could take up a couple of weeks, just going in and digging further in that. So that's a great, thank you for presenting that. If you're not a member of our group, please join us at meetup.com, Tampa Bay IIBA. If you would like to be connected to me on LinkedIn, please reach out to me. I'd love to be a member of your network. LinkedIn.com/in/rfrederick. We also have our meetup group. We have our LinkedIn group, which Cliff put up in the chat session. And then if you have or would like an instructor to come out to your site and teach a class, project management or requirements, I would love the opportunity. If you like these sessions, then you'll love my classes. I just tell people, if you think the sessions are good, I got so much to tell people in classes. It's amazing. And if anybody's interested in what people think about my classes, just go to my LinkedIn profile and look at some of the recommendations that are up there about what it's like to take a class with me. Anyway, so you can reach me at meetings.hubspot.com, rfrederick_PMP, or you can just send me an email or use my phone, text or talk, or however you want to reach out to me. Okay, so are there any questions? Why business users don't like pie charts? What bar chart is more common than a pie chart? Well, they're very different. And I don't know, again, I apologize. I can't speak to why business users don't like pie charts. I think it just depends on what you're trying to explain and what bar chart is more common. Again, it just depends on what you're trying to explain. Usually a pie chart is one point in time, and a bar chart usually accommodates multiple things over time. So I always say a vertical pie chart and a horizontal bar chart, meaning one section of a bar chart might actually be one pie chart. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. Any other questions? And thank you all so much for your information. Oh, what is actionable insight? Actionable insight? Well, it would be information that would drive someone to make a change, right? That's kind of the way I would look at it. In data visualization. Well, if you see something that's, usually people make changes if there is a problem now or a problem coming in the future. So, for example, when you run a data visualization and on a dashboard and the light goes red, we talked about that as earned value, where plan versus actual, and the light is red, then that triggers a change request. Okay, that's known as management by exception. So in data visualization, if you have a car that has a gas gauge where the light comes on, watch it, we'll do this really fast. For those of you, put a yes in the text chat if you wait till the light comes on before you put gas in your car. Put a yes if you wait for the light to come on before you put gas in your car. Okay, great, perfect. That's called management by exception. So that's actionable. No. So there's people, right? There's some people that are like, no, I don't want that light to come on. Okay. So that's called preventive. So there's reactive and preventive, and that's what we means by actionable. So if you have a visualization, one of the two things, it's either going to trigger a preventive action or it's going to trigger a reactive change. What's interesting is there's really only three types of changes. Let me just tell you really quickly. There's defect repair, okay, which is when there's a problem with a product. So you have a product and you're developing it and there's a problem, that's a defect repair that triggers a change, okay? There is error correction. So one is product oriented, one is process oriented, which is error correction. So when there's an error in a process, that triggers a change. The third type is it's called proactive prevention. And that's a change that very few people do. Most institutions operate reactively. They don't operate proactively. Most people wish they did, but they don't. It's like putting out fires every day. So institutionally, the idea is to how do you transition from being reactive to being proactive? And first of all, it takes time. You have to do it. It's culture driven. And secondly, the data helps drive that process. So the more data you have that lets you know how your machine is running, the better off you're going to be in operating the machine. So I use the example of the automobile and the gas gauge because that's a machine, and people manage the machine differently. And that was the example of, do you wait for the gas light to come on before you get gas or not? So it's just how you choose to operate your machine. That's why I always say the two most important words are operate and telemetry. You're operating the machine, and telemetry is the data on your dashboard, i.e. your gas gauge. Everybody good with that? Does that make sense? I'm looking at the text chat. You guys, that all makes sense or not? All right. Excellent. So like I said, if you like my sessions and you like these all these different sessions and you like the way I present information, you'll love the class. so we have a lot of fun. Try not to take anything too seriously. Oh, going forward, we're going to introduce new speakers and some new topics. If you are interested in speaking, if you have something that you'd like to share with the group, feel free to let Cliff or me know. We'd love to introduce new speakers, new topics. Again, it's a community, so and I'm probably gonna. There's not as many. I don't have as many topics going forward. If you have some topics you'd like me to present, please feel free to send them to me as an email. Anything that you might be of interest, or if there's a topic that you wish to present. Again, we have this forum, and we'd love for people to take advantage of it, and educate everybody with the information that you have. So, all right, we're done. So enjoy your weekend, and the recording of this will be out on the meetup and the LinkedIn today. And then again, feel free to send me an email asking for the PDF, and I will get that out to you as well. All right, we're going to call it. Thanks. Have a great day.